Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm back here with chapter number 2, which is titled Bittersweet. This is one of the chapters that I wasn't able to uh, get out in my first video. So, if you haven't followed along, please watch the other video. Click like and subscribe so YouTube can get it out and show other people. I think a lot of people could really benefit from my testimony. Um, just the strength of it is amazing, and that is the foundation that I'm built upon. Um, but we're gonna jump right into chapter 2, which is Bittersweet. That's the title that I named it. Um, and alright, we're just gonna get right into it. So the last chapter we left off with me about to enter into the storm, and about the storm that was waiting for me at home also. There was so much going on, but it's just a beautiful testament on how God has came into mine and my wife's life and saved us and pulled us out of this hole we had dug ourselves in, saved our marriage. And this is just one of my favorite chapters, and it means a lot to me. It's a testament to the love of Heavenly Father and the love He has for His children. So here it goes, chapter 2, Bittersweet. So I had made it home from my job exhausted. My job was physically demanding, yet I was more tired mentally and emotionally. My wife and I were not doing so well. In fact, it was the worst we had been, and it was only getting worse. There was dishonesty and pain between us, pain that hurt our souls and the love we had for each other. We had become so cold and distant from each other because of our pride and stubbornness. We had neglected each other and our family. We had neglected the very gift we had fought so hard to obtain. We had pushed aside each other's feelings, and the cost was great. We wanted things from each other that we refused to give for fear of it getting destroyed by the other. We had faith only in ourselves and not in each other. Our pride, our hurts, our pains and selfishness were not enough to sustain our marriage. I used to believe that love was all you needed. In some cases it was true, but in our case, we needed more. Our love for each other was limited to our pains and hurts. Our love was strong, but we needed something stronger. We needed to do the work, but did not know how to start. We didn't know what to do. We knew that we loved each other, and we knew we had made it through so much and had been given signs throughout our whole relationship that we should love each other and be together. It was so hard now. I used to imagine how awesome our life was going to be once we got our chance to be together. I would spend large amounts of energy and time wondering about our life together and how happy we were going to be once we had our chance. The first time I spoke to my wife, my best friend at the time, was over the phone, and I knew I loved her. We were in different states. I was in California and she was in New Mexico, and I knew I felt her, as if she were as much a part of me as I was of her. I came to New Mexico based on the understanding and knowing that she needed me and that I needed her. I knew it without a shadow of doubt in my mind. More than just knew it, I felt it in my heart and soul. I remember arriving in New Mexico by train. I can remember that day so clearly. As I got off the train that day, I bid the train farewell because I was so glad to be rid of it. I had felt like a snake shedding his skin, and as I exited the train, as I tried to bat my nervousness away, I focused on how I would approach her. On my first impression, I tried to focus my energy. I did what every normal person would have done, and I hid behind a pillar outside the train station. Life seemed to swell and swirl with hope of change and hope for more. As I hid, I knew she was on her way. It could be any minute, any second. I hid so I could have the opportunity of seeing her first. Then I spotted the little black Toyota Corolla driving into the train station and pulling up to the front of the train station. I watched the door of the car open, and there she was. She exited the vehicle by putting both high heels out first before she stepped out. My heart must have stopped. My breath caught in my throat. It was as if my life was standing right in front of me. My whole life literally passed right in front of my eyes. All of my dreams, all of my hopes, everything I had ever wanted, everything I felt my heart needed. My meal ticket for forever. Time seemed to stop, and all of my fears and insecurities came crashing in on me. She's too beautiful for me. Who am I to have this woman? All of my doubts about myself came rushing from the depths of my mind to attack me as if they were waiting for the right time to jump me. As I hid while my future walked into the train station and I watched the doors close behind her, all I could say was, wow. Then reality started to come back to me slowly, and I realized she was gonna have to come back out of the train station eventually. This thought made me laugh to myself because I had not thought that far ahead. Time seemed to speed up at that moment, and was fast approaching when she would see that I was not in the train station. I felt all this energy surround me, and it blew away all of my doubts. Then the sliding doors to the train station opened, and she walked out. It felt like I could do anything when I saw her. I knew that I was not dreaming, because I could not have imagined such a beautiful person. I felt like I knew everything I needed to know about her. She seemed so familiar, so much a part of me, as if I was split in half and the two halves had finally found each other again. It felt like all I had to do was just say her name, and everything I ever wanted or needed would all be mine. So I stepped out from behind the pillar I was standing behind on her left side, and I thought of her name, Felicia. I was just like, oh. I felt it escape my lips and knew that it was already out and spoken. I was already hers, and she was already mine. She turned to me, and we were forever at that moment. It could have been everywhere or nowhere, at any time or never at all. I felt the pull. Our bodies pulled towards each other, and we embraced for the very first time. The memory of that day lives so vividly in me still. I knew I loved my wife, and I knew she loved me. Just thinking about our love would pass the time for me. It would consume me to the point where time would not matter, and we could spend an eternity together in a moment. I never knew anything like that until I stepped off the train. Being in the desert reminded me of that feeling. In that feeling, I felt like I had the power to move mountains and the power to calm the turbulent seas. It gave me the feeling of being found and that my drifting days were over. I knew I had found my place in the world and knew where I belonged. And where I belonged did not consist of a building or a place. Where I belonged was in love. In love with my wife, who God had sent to me, and God had sent me to her. My place was in her heart. My home, our home, was in each other. I thought I had finally been delivered and liberated from my days out at sea, where my only companion was my loneliness and the turbulent seas and waves. I had no power there in the water. I had no faith to calm the waters. I had no power to calm the storms or the hurricanes. They were relentless tyrants who had no mercy on me. Then there were arguments after arguments within our marriage and ourselves. The distance between us was so great that darkness, evil, and negativity had room to grow and fester. We had quite literally opened the door to evil and had given it its own space in our home and in our lives. All of the hopes I had spent so many hours and days thinking of had all but vanished. There was no room to grow in our love. There was no space for stability because we had no foundation. We were without God and were without faith. We had no compass or motivation to go anywhere. We were stuck, and we both knew it. It was a horrible feeling, and at the same time, I felt like God was working on me. He had taken me to the desert, had shown me His power over me and over all things. He had given me the space to think about my wrongs and the sins I had committed, how I had wronged my wife and myself. He took me to this place in the desert and stripped me of my arguments, and He was showing me that I had been wrong. In many ways, the desert was more real to me than the world I had known my whole life. I felt more real there. I could not escape it, and a big part of me would not have tried to. I knew God was in control, and I wish I could say that I had an idea as to why I had been in the desert, but I didn't have a clue. I did not know how I was there, where I was, or what I was supposed to do. I thought of the U-shaped tree and what it could have possibly meant. As a dream interpreter, I didn't have a clue. Everything was happening to me, and it had swept me off my feet and knocked me down a notch. It had stripped me to my core, and everything I had felt, I knew about myself. Everything I had felt I knew about myself was all but gone. This feeling I had felt since God had taken me to the desert had grown. Well, that's the end of chapter 2. And it's called Bittersweet because it has a little bit of the love, that new love that we had felt when we first met, and the bitterness of kind of losing sight of it. You know, we get in relationships and it's great and grand in the beginning, but then reality sets in and problems arise and the world tends to beat you up and you can lose sight of it, and it becomes a bittersweet, you know, and we have to get back to that. We have to find that again, you know, and hold on to it. And in this second chapter of Bittersweet, being in the desert showed me it again. It had was redefining it and refining it through this journey that God had put me on, you know, and all this is happening at the same time of being in the desert and going to the desert, you know, and at the same, God's doing all this work with me, taking me to my core, showing me who I want to be and who I don't want to be, you know, and it's just this beautiful journey, and it's one of my favorite chapters because I love my wife. And I love what we have. I love our family, you know, and that's the ground. That's a foundation that can be built upon. And that love, once you give it to God and give your relationship to Him, He will put Him at the end of it, head of it. Then He'll just take it further than you guys could ever took it. You know, so I hope this chapter really speaks to people. It means so much to me. The next chapter, chapter 3, is about the Las Vegas shooting, and I was so closed off to the world, and I really didn't care about anybody else. And one day all of that changed when God reconnected me to the world and put me there at the Las Vegas shooting, and I literally felt everything that was being felt that day as if I was there physically, it was such a crazy experience for me that it just reopened me up to the world, and pretty much was a reminder that the world is bigger than just me or just you or just one person, and that we, through life beating us up, disconnect ourselves from that kind of stuff. You know, we see things on the news and really don't put ourselves in there, you know, because it's not happening to us. But God changed that for me, and I can't wait to get to the next chapter. But please keep following along, keep listening, share, like, subscribe so you can get all the latest videos. It gets crazier with the casting out of demons, just showing this awesome journey, being back in the desert, and all the beautiful things that God has showed me, other visions, constant guidance and promptings, even hearing the voice of our Savior Jesus Christ and the words that He's spoken to me. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.